Okay, Sarah.
Rab.
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Hi, Jonathan. Nice Omer beard you're sporting there.
Oh, thank you very much. All the grey. Yeah.
Excellent. Do we have Rabbi Mason yet? Hi, Rabbi Carla.
Hello, 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 Adrian. Hello, Jonathan. The gray. I see the gray. It looks very impressive. It has a lot of prestige.
Yeah, it was all white paint. Yeah.
Exactly. Is it Rabbi? Who was it? Who was it? Rabbi Ben? Was it Rabbi Gamliel whose beard went? No, it wasn't. Who was it? Whose beard went grey?
Elazar ben Azariah.
Elazar ben Azariah. Sorry, yeah. That's me, obviously. Ah, Rabbi Mason. Bruchim habayim.
Bruchim and Nimtzoim. Hello, gosh. Adrian Cohen's in. That's it. I'm off then, definitely. Nice haircut, Adrian.
That's very kind of you.
Nice.
Thank you. Self-inflicted. Self-inflicted. If anyone's interested.
What were you on yesterday? You were introduced. Were you on the hustings yesterday? Were you involved?
Oh, well, yeah. That was quite tricky.
Yeah, I bet. Was it okay?
Yeah, it's because we gave a right of reply. So Sean Bailey was very rude about Sadiq. Sadiq was then, I had to give him a right reply. He was really rude about Sean, so then I'd give him a right reply. Then there was an argument over then I had again, there was an argument over whose right of reply would go first. And then so it all got a bit, and then there were the two other candidates who, because they weren't slagging each other off, they weren't getting the extra airtime. So it suddenly dawned on me that I was being gamed, that by slagging each other off, they were taking up all the time the hustings, right? So
it's not like we have any doubt who's going to win this one anyway, is it?
No, I know.
Oh, really,
Well, we had a few bricks thrown at us as well because we didn't invite them 17 candidates to the hosting.
I've never seen so many candidates for an election. Is it always like that for mayor?
Well, I'm rooting for Piers Corbyn.
Piers Corbyn, yes.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Hello, Alex. Good to see you, Alex.
Hey, Rabbi.
Rabbi Fryan.
Hello, Rabbi Mason.
Rabbi Carlbach. So hold on, you're Rabbi where?
Oh, where? So we about a year ago, we started the Greenwich and Docklands Chabad Jewish Community Center. So focusing on the Greenwich and Docklands area for those who are living and working in the area.
Mostly catering to sailors.
So,
boats.
Lovely to meet you. Really good to see you.
Pleasure to meet you. I love to
So,
actually have a
Mishpocha,
conversation.
The great Carlebach. So there was a Carlebach here actually in Manchester. There was a what was his? Who was the Rev Carl? Who was the Carlebach in Manchester? It was a rabbi.
Felix Karlbach. Felix Karlbach. My
Mishpocha.
great uncle. My great uncle.
Wow. Notice I went to Rev Felix Carlebach and not to Shlomo Carlebach, who was your cousin or great or uncle or something.
I generally can tell a person about which Karlbach they know. I can tell what kind of person they are about who they tell me they are you related to.
I never went to Mavo Modi'in. Let me tell you that. but I do know a number in my shul in Kingston. Actually, I think there was the David Lawson. He's now a member of my shul. He used to talk a lot about Rav Felix. So where was Rabbi Unterman? Was Unterman in the same shul after him? Alan Unterman. I can't remember. Yeah, there was an Unterman in Manchester as well. Who was Mishpacha of the Chief Rabbi of Israel, Rav Isaac Unterman.
Right.
But
So his nephew used to work at Clifford Chance, Yitzhak Unterman.
Yitzhak Unterman, yeah. There's an Edor in Israel. There's a Yossi Unterman. Remember, I don't know if you know Yossi. Yeah. So, but Felix
Yitzhak Unterman's grandfather was Chief Rabbi of Tel Aviv.
Wow. Right. Was he the Chief Rabbi? Was he the rabbi who was also Chief Rabbi? Was it Isaac? Was it Isaac Unterman? Yitzhak Unterman?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the chief, the Ashkenazi.
Was he Chief Rabbi over? Oh, right. I knew he was a Tel Aviv. Right.
Probably became. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Tucker, Mamish. Right. Okay. Without more ado, thank you first of all to welcome Rabbi Mason, and as always, the Doughty support from Rabbi Carlebach. So in the usual way, we're going to first start off with a couple of kapitel of Tehillim, not Tefillin, and which Rabbi Carlebach will lead us, and then Rabbi Mason will be addressing us on the subject of, I was going to say the Super League, but actually it's going to be Holiness, or maybe the two are connected.
I'll connect them. You never know.
Just I noticed you're an Arsenal supporter.
Yeah, not anymore. Well, I shouldn't say that. Billy Nedder or whatever.
What's happened to Dundee United?
That's right. Well done, Sid Braham.
So everyone, please, we say Tillim every week in honor for all those who are unwell. Everyone, please join along, and you can have in mind the name and the mother's name of the person who is unwell while we say the Tehillim. We'll start off with Psalm 121, Kapitel Kuf Chaf Aleph. Shir Amalas Esei Nayel Arimanya Vayezri. Ezri mi Madino Yoisei Shmaim Baretz. Aitin Lamraglacha Yanum Shaimracha. Hine Layanum Velayishan Shaimer Yisrael. Adonai Shaimracha Noitzilcha Yadim Yinecha. Yoim Shemesh Le'akeka V'yarech B'loila. Adonai Yishmarcha Mikol Ra Yishmar Es Nafshecha. Adonai Yishmar Tzeizcha U'vayecha Mi'ata V'yad Olam. Psalm 130, Kapitel Kuf Lamed. Shir Amalis Mima Makim Karasicha Adonai. Adonai Shima V'Kerli Tiana Aznecha Gashuv Es L'Kerl Tachanunai. Imavoines Tishmar Ya Adonai Miyamoid. Kimcha Slicha Laman Tivarei. Kivisi Adonai Kivsa Nafshi V'Lidvarei Hoicholti. Nafshi Ladinei Mishoim Nim Laboiker Shoim Nim Laboiker. Yachid Israel Adonai Ki Adonai Chesed V'Harbe Im Hiftus. V'hu Yiftas Yisrael Mikol Avinoisav. Rabbi Mason, take it away, please, and I'm going to make you co-host, so if you need to share anything and everything.
Absolutely. Let me just hold on. Realize that I've just come from a meeting. I literally have meetings all the way to, and I feel like I'm in the wharf somewhere. And I've had meetings all day. Now what I've happened is I've lost my tabs and I've lost what I was meant to share. So give me a second. I'm going to mute myself quickly and then I'm just going to find, give me a minute. Okay, so we're going to be using Safari to the max today. Okay, so obviously the parsha this week got Achrei Mot Kedoshim. And so what I wanted to do is really end up looking at a very important Ramban. Some of you might have seen it, so apologies if you have. But this is a really, really what you would call a classic Ramban. This is a Ramban from the Champions League. Notice not from the Super League, from the Champions League of Rambans here. And it's all about Kedusha, because of course, when we look at the Torah this week, if you look at the start of Parshat Kedoshim, if you look on the left of your screen, hopefully it's the left of your screen, we begin the Parsha, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemor, Daber al Kladat b'nei Yisrael, speak to the whole congregation of Israel, V'amarta alehem Kedoshim tiyu, say to them, be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Why should you be holy? Because I'm holy. Right, you medame, you compare, you're in a sense going to imitate God here by being holy. What we're not told, of course, is what's the nature of that kedusha. Right, we're not really told much. Kedoshim tiyu. It's a positive commandment, of course, one of the 248 positive commandments. But we're not told what is it. What exactly is it? So that's really interesting. And what we're going to do is see two diverging approaches to what the nature of Kedusha is. How can I as an individual become holy? Both looking at also the context of this mitzvah of being holy in the Torah. Because of course, Kedoshim comes after Achrei Mot. And Achrei Mot deals with a lot of what we call arayot, the forbidden sexual relations. And so the context of Kedusha, the context of this holiness, almost looks like it's carrying on. It's moving on from the parsha before. That is going to inform the approach of Rashi. That in a way, this statement of being holy sits very clearly connected to the parsha before, to Acharei Mot. Now, if the parsha before is talking about how I should separate myself from forbidden sexual relations, right, it will be clear to understand that Kedusha is about separation from sin. It's about moving away from what is wrong. It's about distancing from what is negative. And that you'll see here where my cursor is on the third column from the left is the comment of Rashi. Kedoshim tiyu, hevu prushim. And he brings this term, prushim. Interestingly enough, this was the term given by the Sadducees that stuck him for the Pharisees, because they always were worried. They were separating from Tumah. If you look in Masechet Yadayim, one of the Masechtot of Mishnah in Tarot, in the Seder called Tarot, which deals in the main about impurity, Tara and Tumah, then often they're mockingly calling them Prushim because they separate. And here actually, Rashi is utilizing this term to explain Hevu Prushim min ha'arayot u min ha'avera. Be separate from promiscuity, sexual relations, and from sin. Interestingly, he adds in Avera. I'm going to look at a Maral which explains that and sort of strengthens Rashi. We'll come back to that. Shekol makom shatamotse geder erva, any place where you find a fence for erva, in other words, a fence that distances you, protects you from getting anywhere near erva, atamotse kedusha, right? And so he quotes psukim, isha zona v'chalala, right? Lo yikachu, you shouldn't take a kohen, shouldn't take certain relations. Ani Hashem mekadishchem, right? Then the kohen, of course, shouldn't desecrate who comes after him, his seed, the progeny. Lo yichal al zaro, ani Hashem mekadsho. Right? So Kedoshim, according to Rashi, is about separation, is about moving away. Right? It's the negative side. And I think that's what we often think about, right? When we think about Kedusha. We think about, right, being holy, being righteous, being holy, not doing what is wrong. Almost that's the easiest way to think about Kedusha, is separating from things that are wrong, separating from Avera. And the context is absolutely clear. And Rashi, in some ways, is quite right to think about the context, which is that in the Parsha before, right, we've talked about Arayot, things that we should distance from. Now, at the beginning of the next Parsha, Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, by the way, tell them Kedoshim to you. Be holy. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because almost what you've got is you've got lots of detail in Parsha Achremot, and then you've got a klal, what we call a generality. Right? God lists lots of things that I shouldn't do, and then ends with a generalization. And by the way, be holy. Now, Ramban takes that up. Ramban is the great rabbi of what I would call contextual pshat. Whereas Rashi will stay tight with Chazal, right? He will take midrashim, right? And midrashe halacha often, right? Pieces of what we call midrashe halacha from books like the Mechilta, the Sifrei, right? He will take them and he will bring them and append them to the psukim. The Ramban will look a wider span, right? It will look at context and think a bit more widely. And it's that Ramban that I want to look at here. I don't know if people want to come in at any point. By the way, if you want to ask a question, please do. I'm happy to carry on. But please do if you want to. Hold on a second, I'll make sure. Right, so.
Thank you.
Kedoshim Tiyu. Here on the left here of Rashi is Ramban. So Sid, you need to... Right, okay, fine. We've got a mute, but that's okay. So, Kedoshim Tiyu. Hevu prushim min arayot min avera. He firstly quotes Rashi. Separate yourself from the arayot, from the sexual relations, and from sin. Shekol makom shata motze geder erva. Anywhere where you find that sense of fence that distances you from erva, ata motze kedusha. You find kedusha. Lashon Rashi. Aval, right, Lashon Rashi. Aval b'Torat Kohanim. But in the Torat Kohanim is a name given for the Midrash Halacha on Vayikra. Of course, the Sefer is often known as the Torat Kohanim. Torat Kohanim is given to the Sefer itself of Midrash Halacha. He there sees Aval b'Torat Kohanim, and he actually gives you the source. Let's see if I click that. I get the source. Did I get the source? I don't know if I did, actually. This is good, fun to play with. There's Sifra, and there is, I'm getting Hebrew. There you are. So here's the source. Daber el koladat b'nei Yisrael. So at the beginning of the Parsha, speak to the congregation of Israel. That's what Moshe is told. V'amarta aleim, and tell them, Kedoshim to you. Firstly, Melamed, it teaches us, she'parsha ne'emra b'hakel. The commandments that we're going to read in Kedoshim, and they're very varied. Some of them are Bein Adam Lamakom, right? How we relate to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Some of them are Bein Adam L'Chaveiro, between each other, right? Famously, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, we see in there. Umipnei ma nemra b'hakel. Why is this said in public, in a public gathering of the Am? Mipnei sherov gufei Torah teluyim ba. Because most of the bodies of the Torah are, in a sense, drawn or dependent on it. In other words, it's a real compendium of mitzvot that link to other places in the Torah. But I'm more interested in the next line or two. Kedoshim to you, the Torah says Kedoshim to you, Prushim to you. You should be Prushim. And what Ramban wants to pick on there, let's see what happens if I close this. What Ramban wants to pick on there is, there we are, is that there is no clarification as to what Prushim means. It's what we call stam. There is no description there telling us what Prushim means in that context. Kedoshim to you, Prushim to you. You could almost read the word Prushim into the Torah, which means, of course, Lifrosh means to separate. But separate from what? That isn't absolutely clear. Rashi takes one standpoint. He understands from other psukim that when you are told not to sin, you often find the word kedusha, and he's in a good position. That it really is a good position. I think the Ramban is quite radical here, because B'Torat Kohanim, he says, right, he's stam, where my curse is. I saw unclarified, not described. Prushim to you, v'chein shanu sham, and similarly it teaches there, right, in the Torat Kohanim on Parshat Shmini, v'hit kadishtem v'yitem kedoshim. At the end of Parshat Shmini, we read, you shall become holy, and then you will be holy. Often in the Gemara used to relate to Netilat Yadayim, Rishonim, and Achronim, actually. Here, ki kadoshani, be holy because I'm holy, kashem she'ani kadosh, similarly that I am holy, kachatem tiyu kadoshim, so you should be holy. Kashem she'ani parush, kachatem tiyu prushim, just like I am parush, substitute for kadosh, right? So you should be prushim. Okay? Again, what the Ramban is saying here so far is that there is no qualification as to what the prisha is. We might assume that separation means separating from something wrong, from chet, from erva, from something promiscuous. But here, he's going to change that. Ulafi da'ati. And that's the Ramban, right? You don't really see that in Rashi. But with the Ramban, you'll see ulafi da'ati. You'll see a little bit. He's not going to be like Ibn Ezra, who goes off on one, as we say, right? He's very independent-minded, Avram Ibn Ezra. He will base what he believes on Chazal, on the Gemara, right, or the Talmud, or the Midrash. But he just speaks more. He goes off. He's going to have his own idea here. Ein ha-prishut hazor lifrosh min harayot kedivrei harav. This prishut that we've been told here in this parsha, this separation, lifrosh min harayot, right, it is not to separate from promiscuity, like the Rav has said. Rav, look, notice he calls Rashi Harav. Remember, Rashi lived a century or two before. Rashi was what, the 11th, 12th century? He was the 13th century Ramban in a place called Genoa, near Barcelona. I should be mentioning the place like Barcelona after all this Super League stuff, right? But we'll go for Genoa. Aval aprishut hi hamuskeret b'chol makom b'Talmud. Interesting. He says here that the prishut, which is mentioned in any place in the Talmud, sheba'alea nikra'im prushim, whose authors, whose owners are called prushim, the Pharisees, right? Va'inyan, and here we are, explains here, ki Torah hizhira ba'arayot. The Torah warns us about arayot, about promiscuity. Let me just go down a little bit. Ubama achalim asurim, and with forbidden foods. Vehitira habia ish beishto. There are things that we take for granted, but it's almost the way, the concept of the Ramban here in Torah is that God forbade a number of things and left a number of things permitted. There is a clear demarcation between a world of Isur and a world of Heter, right? Which is really interesting because it makes me think of, and this is a big area in Halacha. Number one, right, not making something which is clearly demarcated as Asur into Heter, right? You know, so we've always got to be very careful of that. But also, do we also have to be careful with something which is clearly mutter, right? Not making it Asur. Again, I'm thinking off the top of my head here. I'm pretty sure I remember when I did smicha, you know, we're told batal b'shishim, right? The milk is annulled if there is a 60th of meat, 60 times the amount of meat in the pot than there is the milk that has by mistake dropped in. If it's mixed in and you can't see it anymore, and you understand that there are 60 times the meat, you know there's meat there, right? And milk there. There is technically a mixture of meat and milk. But the Gemara understood that shishim is considered in halacha enough to annul. Now, I can't remember the authority. I think it might be the Rosh. There were Rishonim that said that if someone is machmir, they are motzi la'az al harishonim. They are, in a sense, mocking earlier great writers who decided that. In other words, they could be frummer, right? There could be more machmir, decide that what is understood by most people as mutter, I'm going to consider heter. Now, sometimes I'm going to consider it usser. What is considered by most people mutter, I'm going to consider that usser. Now, sometimes that is what we call chumrah, and that's fine. But there may well be times when actually it's beyond the chumrah because of the fact that the consensus is that the thing itself is mutter. Is that so? Here, there's a demarcation being made between an olam of isur, a world of prohibition, and a world of what is permitted. God didn't prohibit sexual relations. He prohibited it with some people. But ish v'ishto, v'achilat habasar v'ayayin, and for instance, eating of meat and wine, right? Interesting, right? Meat and wine, it's not forbidden, right? You can't go around and say, oh, we've got to stop eating meat because of the environment, right? You can talk about reducing. You talk about, but to go and say it's usher, this is an interesting conversation with people who are vegetarian and talking about, B'nai Noach, the time of Noach, where we were eating meat before a certain point, and what's more important. There's a Gemara, of course, that talks about ein simcha ela babasar v'yayin. Is that talking about the time of the temple, eating of the offering? Yayin, yisamach levavenosh. We're told that the wine, it's in Tehillim, isn't it, in Psalms? Wine rejoices the heart of a person. So imken now, but these things we love them. We love our meat. Who doesn't like a good barbecue, right? And a nice cup of wine, a good glass of wine, right? I'll stop there, right? Imken yimtsa bala taiva makom liot shatuv bezimat ishto. Right? If that is the case, these are areas of permission. It allows area for the lust of an individual to take root. I'm just adding some words. In other words, that person who's a Baal Taiva, he can find place to be, in a sense, flooded with lots of sexual relations with his wife, right? More than he should. Or have many wives. Obviously, that's not relevant today, but it might have been then. He could overdo the wine and the meat, right? It's permitted to eat meat. Don't tell me it's usher, it's mutter. So you can have lots of wine, get drunk, right? V'yidaber kirtsono b'chol nivlos shelo huskar isur zeh b'Torah. He could speak about all sorts of things, and what he's going to say is interesting, that there probably are areas that aren't demarcated in the Torah itself. Now, this is a very interesting approach of the Ramban. The Ramban's approach to Torah is that it is not an exhaustive guide to our life. That there are things, many, many things that are not demarcated, are not written in the Torah. And here, he focuses on that world of heter, the world of what is permitted. That the Torah doesn't really help us, I mean, that's his approach, in how we relate to the olam of mutter. It is mutter. The Torah has 365 negative commandments, 248 positive. Obviously, many positive commandments are connected to, the chagim, maybe to the korbanos, or to the Beit HaMikdash, whatever. So he is worried about that area of heter, and he then coins a very important phrase here. Right? He says, "V'hinei yeh naval birshuta Torah." He will therefore be a naval, a scoundrel. I could say a lot worse, probably. A nasty piece of work, right? A scoundrel, right? A criminal or a bad person. I wonder how they actually translate it in the Sefaria. See if we can get that. Can't remember whether the Hebrew is first or. No, hold on, let's go here. Here we are, and a sordid person. Oh, look at that, I love that one. Within the permissible realm of the Torah, right? A naval, I think the Hebrew sounds a lot better. A naval b'shus haTorah. He is a scoundrel, right? He's not very good with the license of the Torah itself, right? In other words, the Torah doesn't forbid any of this stuff, right? So he said it's mutter. So that, right? Lefichach ba hakatuv. Therefore, to that individual, the scoundrel with the license of the Torah, comes the Torah acharei sheparat ha'isurim she'asar otam legamre, after it spells out the particulars of the prohibitions which are completely prohibited, right? In other words, we've had the list of prohibitions of sexual relations, and that's what Rashi looked to do. Rashi says there's a list of sexual relations that we're prohibited. Therefore, the Torah wants to emphasize, make sure you separate from sin. Look at the list that I've just told you. Make sure you impress on the Bnei Israel to be separate. Ramban disagrees, says, no, it doesn't need to repeat that. You've already had the list. But after it sets out that list, the tziva b'davar klali, it then goes general, sheniye prushim, that we should separate ourselves, min ha-mutarot, from what is permitted. Not going back on what is forbidden to us, which has been made absolutely clear in Parshat Achremot, but a different type of klal. Not the klal of be holy, be separate from sin. The klal, the generalization of be holy, be separate from what is left to you that is permitted. Yima'et, says the Ramban, b'meshagel, right? One should reduce sexual contact. Ke'inyan she'amru, and he quotes Gemara. He's not quoted the Gemara yet. Now he's going to say, the Gemara Brachot says, Lo yitamedei chachamim mitzuyim eitzon neshoteim ketar negolim. The Talmidei Chachamim, basically the Gemara in Brachot, looks at different frequencies of sexual contact between a husband and wife, depending on the nature of the person. And for Talmid Chacham, this is actually a Gemara in Kiddushin, actually, but in Brachot it says the Talmid Chacham should not be too often like a chicken, it says here, right? V'lo yishamesh ela kfiyat sarich, b'kiyuma mitzvah mimenu. He should only have relations according to the mitzvah of having children. Now, this is a Talmid Chacham, this is not necessarily everyone, but I think he's making a point that even with something which is permitted, which is not bad, there's no essential problem with it, sexual relations between a person, a man, and that individual's wife, the man and his wife, even there are some limits here understood as to, as to what should happen. Right, one should be able to sanctify himself by having a small amount of wine, like why we call the Nazir, who of course goes without wine for a specific limited amount of time, right? A kadosh. The word kadosh is used with a Nazir, not to separate from sin. It's interesting that the offering he brings at the end of it is a sin offering. It's possible that actually he's bringing the sin offering because he's separating from the world. He's not reducing the amount of wine, is he? He's having nothing. He's going overboard in a way, but that's another discussion. We remember the bad things that happened in the Torah in Noach and Lot. One should separate from impurity. Interesting statement now. Even though the individual we're not commanded on it, he's saying in the Torah, we should still separate from it. So there's no isser to become tameh, he's saying. There's no prohibition to become impure. Rather, what the Ramban is saying, obviously, we know that if a person did become impure, there was a process of purification. And that's stipulated in the Torah and, of course, through many masechtot in the Gemara. It's everywhere. I'm doing Daf Yomi, and if any of you are doing it, you can see often his concept of purity and impurity just come up quite often. But even although there's no absolute prohibition to become impure, right? Still, he's saying we should restrict ourselves from impurity. It's permitted. Very interesting, isn't it? Impurity was permitted. That doesn't mean you become impure. And down here, v'gam yishmor piv u'lushono. One should also keep his mouth. Mitgael beribui achila agasa, from too much eating. Umina dibur animas, from disgusting, not nice, unpleasant speech. Right? As we say, v'chol peh dover nevela, right? That's a statement in Isaiah. Every mouth that speaks nevela, which is like a trafe, right? Not nice. V'yikadesh atzmo b'zeh ad sheyagia leprishut. And one should sanctify himself with what is permitted until the individual comes to a sense of prishut, of this prishut, not separation from sin, but coming to a point when he is not reliant on the material. So I think this is a different channel, right? A different channel entirely than what Rashi is doing, right? In Psalms, we say, right, right, guard your tongue from speaking bad and your lips from speaking deceit, right? Sur meira va'aseh tov, right? We say move away from bad and do the good. And always in yeshiva, and I'm pretty sure this is also, I know this is a structural thing that the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, used for his book, the Mesilat Yesharim, the Path of the Just, as it is often called in English, where the first chapters are moving away from sin. Sur Meira, move away from sin. That's the first, in a sense, structure. And the second level, the second part of the book, is about aseh tov, is about doing good. Right? And I think, therefore, there is also almost a hierarchy being created here, a hierarchy being created between an approach to life which is always worried about sin and worried about doing wrong, which of course is important, and one which can then build on that, a kedusha, holiness, which also deals with what is permitted. Because one can worry about sin and never, in a sense, manage the energy that a person has, that they give to their religion, doesn't manage, in a sense, the things that are permitted for them. And so the term we've got here is kadesh atzmecha b'mutar lach. Sanctify with what is permitted to you. And it's a really, really powerful thing. Let's see if there's anything more here that I will, actually very interesting goes on. He has here, he says, the verse is warning, Sheniye neki'im utahorim uprushim, that we should be clean and pure and separate, mehamon b'nei adam, from the masses of people, shehem melachlechim atzman, that dirty themselves, b'mutarot, u'b'ki'urim, with what is permitted and with ugliness. So it's very interesting here that so far he's almost talked about prisha as separating from what is permitted and not having too much of what is permitted. Now he just adds in this really interesting thing, that the person who worries about what's permitted and separating from largesse, overdoing it, will also be careful of who he mixes with, which is an interesting thing. It's a almost antisocial comment here. Not because he's worried about sin, because he's worried about the being pulled in by overdoing what is permitted. Now, I'm happy to come back. Anyone got any question you want to come in with there? Please do come in. I don't know whether I know one or two people join. Please just unmute yourself if you'd like to ask something or make a comment, or you're basically all eating lunch at the moment. I know. I hope it's a good lunch. So, okay, I will carry on. I think giving these talks when everyone's off video is almost like you need a certain level of belief and emunah that everyone's actually there. I'm being funny, by the way, I'm joking. So there's something really important here, because often in religion we focus on what we do wrong, and that's really important in making sure that we aren't eating non-kosher, and making sure our relationships are right, making sure that we don't break Shabbat. There's a lot of that in Psak Halacha. Am I doing this right? Am I breaking Pesach? Am I eating chametz? But here there is an approach to the world, to what is permitted in the world to us. And I think given that there is greater connectivity in the world today, and we can, in a sense, connect across the world, we can mine our world more, we can draw more of the natural resources from our world. We can, and there is a sense that we are, and this is going to get a bit more in the space between economics and politics, I think here probably, we're able to commodify a lot more of what exists in our world. Commodification is, in a sense, taking something which is of the world, permitted to us. Right? Look, I mean, again, I will connect it, I suppose, to the football. Football is something which, grew up as a local game, has become a worldly popular game. It's just a game. It's, at the end of the day, 22 pretty relatively skilled people, and obviously unless you talk about Tottenham, and it wouldn't be, playing with a football together, and all sorts of things can happen. You can even, if you were one day in rugby school and your name's William Webb Ellis, decide to pick the ball up and throw it back and forwards and run with it and invent a new game. It's just a game. But it has become more and more commodified. I remember in Highgate Shul, when Rabbi List brought Tony Adams, the Arsenal defender, to speak. And he talked about the way he was signed, he signed on the forms in the sort of toilet at the club training grounds. It was all very basic and whatever. It was like there was something nice about the difference between that and where we are now with top clubs. So of course, business and the market is part of our life. But this commodification, which we know exists in nature, right? The commodification of forestry, of land, right? Of for building property, is something almost where we are using what we feel is permitted to us. Is there anything wrong in knocking a forest down to build palm oil plantations, or to create a super league using the clubs as tools to make more finance to keep the sustainability of top clubs? Is it wrong in the sense of, would we call it halakhically forbidden? Possibly, I don't know. But it just made me think that the Ramban here opens up a way to not just focus on the world of Isser, the area of life which is, in a sense, prohibited. That's easier often. It's really easy to be able to understand that something is wrong. I put a geder up, I put a fence up, and I don't go over the fence. Right? We say, Poretz geder, yeshchenu nachash. Right? We say that, don't we? Where is that said? Is it Mishle, isn't it? Poretz geder, yeshchenu nachash. The one who breaks through, right, makes a hole in the fence, the snake will bite him. If you get through, then it's dangerous. So we don't go through. We ideally, right, most of us, right, we build a fence. That's it. We build the fence. But in the area of what is mutter, what is permitted, it's a much harder world to develop a sense of right or wrong. Adrian Cohen's coming to tell me that I've done enough time.
No, not at all. No, I was going to ask, just lowering my hand now. For those who live with holes in our fences, we're Benoni, we struggle, we don't keep up the fence that well, or is there no hope for us?
Well, I think
all our good acts. I mean, you do, on the one hand, you kind of pick over, talks about weighing our good acts, knowing the cost of a sin and the reward of a mitzvah, which kind of does seem to suggest there could be a scale here. So, but are we saying, is a hole in the fence a bit like a hole below the waterline, that you kind of that unless you immunize yourself, protect yourself against sin, that you're kind of your good deeds are just tainted inevitably?
I think that's a really good question. I think that we all have fences. we all do. I think we all have, our own fences to think. We all have rules, because I think the point, Adrian, of the fence is it demarcates a place where we are kept from the, in a sense, the urges that might exist inside urges. So when it comes, for instance, to certain things, then I suppose that it's an interesting question. There might even not be a need for the fence. I mean, maybe the fence exists and it's so thick. I'm thinking about, again, there's no urge to kill someone. Most of us don't kill. We don't go out killing people. There's no urge there, right? I'm thinking about, I mean, I don't want this to be controversial, but, Chris Browning was a writer who wrote a famous book called Ordinary Men about the Holocaust and about a certain specific battalion where they were just ordinary people. His theory is that ordinary Germans got caught up in this. They didn't want, but they did it, and they did it. There was something inside them that turned them, made it easier and able for them to kill people. The Jewish people were so belittled, so hated in the propaganda that it almost allowed the fence to be eroded. So that with the holes in it was easy. Now, for most of us, we don't have that. So I think I probably would want to connect in the theory of the famous Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, the Michtab Eliyahu, who has a theory about what he calls the Nekudat HaBechira, the point at which we have free will. Because for him, you don't always have free will when you think. I mean, I know I keep Shabbos, like you do, right? And so when I go to a light, I have no urge to switch a light on. There's no act of free will. I can't go, you know what? I didn't switch a light on this Shabbos. I didn't cook on Shabbos. I don't get any reward for that, let's say, or I don't get, because I didn't have any free will. I mean, that's what I've done. It's part of my life. There will be things that we may, want to say something about someone and we shouldn't, and we do or we don't. And at that point, the free will bites. At that point, maybe. So we all have fences, and they're all, I suppose, are moments when maybe, yes, the fence can be, needing of strengthening, and that is okay. That's part of humanity. That's part of our condition. Be careful of mentioning the word Beinoni, by the way, because in the Balatanya, Beinoni is an incredibly high level, right?
Well, so I don't mean to claim that then.
Don't call us Beinonim, or I'm Rasha Batovlo. I'm good Rasha Batovlo. That was Rebbe Ephraim there. But no, I don't. Does that help at all, Adrian?
Very much so.
Maybe we've all got multiple fences. Maybe there are multiple fences in our character, to different areas in different life. Because remember, we talk about, for instance, the three cardinal, right? Murder, sexual promiscuity, and avodah zarah. And avodah zarah, how does that relate to our present day of maybe obsessing with things that aren't God? I don't know. But each of them have different fences set up, probably, because each of them involve different urges. An urge doesn't just have to be about sexual issues. And actually, that's why, according to the Maharal, I'm just going to tell you it outside instead of going to, I've got it here somewhere. According to the Maharal, that's why Rashi, and I'm going over Rashi in the shed thing here, says, Hevu prushi min arayot u min aveira. Separate yourself from arayot and sin, because the problem with Rashi is this is a new parsha. Speak to the Bnei Yisrael. So it doesn't relate to the parsha before. That's Ramban's point. There's a new statement. You had a list of all the arayos. Now there's a new statement, a generalized statement. That's dealt with, done all the negative stuff, as in negative commandments. Now, with what's left that's permitted, be sanctified. So Rashi, of course, has got that problem. How can he deal with the fact that we're talking about a new beginning? Daber al adat bnei Yisrael, wherever daber al adat, daber al kol bnei Yisrael, speak now to them, this thing. That's why, according to the Maharal, Rashi puts in Aveira. And I think that is very important in addressing your point, Adrian. We're not talking just about Arayot, right, which probably we would assume has an incredibly strong element of urge to it across society. But we're also talking about other Averot as well. And that, says the Maharal, means that this parsha is connected forward because it's related to things in the parsha. Remember, this week's part in Kedoshim talks about lo telech rachil, don't gossip, love, don't hate al tisna et achicha milvavecha, don't hate your brother. So there's other Aveirot there as well that we should distance from. In that Rashi paradigm, that we should distance from sin, not the Ramban one. Anyone else? I mean, I think that's my time, because I was given 45 minutes. So I've pretty much, I think, oh no, have I got more time? I've got more time.
No, yeah, you're meant to finish at 13:45, but we
Good.
have injury time, and we can always go to the penalty shootout.
No, I'm good. So both, I think that was good to look at that Ramban, compare it with the Rashi, but also just a thought about, should we as Jewish people, in a sense, give over that value outside our kehilot to the world of you can, in a sense, create holiness. It's not a distant concept in what is permitted in this world. And I think at the moment, in the world we live in, where there's so much commodification, financialization of what is permitted, I think that's really important value.
Thank you very, very much. Very, very nice share.
Thank you, Rabbi Ephraim. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. We look forward, please God, to you coming down to Canary Wharf at some point.
Amen. I'd love to. Nice to see you all. Good to see people that I know, Sid I know, and Alex, and anyone else that I know, and all of you. Permitted learning. I like that one. All right, I'll let you. Lovely to see you all. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah.
Chazak Baruch.
Amen.